And just like that, y'all, we made it to the end of the NBA regular season. Can't say playoffs have started yet, though. We're going into the NBA play-in, which is honestly, I'm just really excited for the play-in. The play-in's so cool. It's like a little version of March Madness within the NBA season. While it's not completely one and done and everything, right? It's exciting. It's one matchup against two really good teams, and we've got some great talent going against each other, especially in this Western Conference series that we'll be covering today. So I'm really excited to talk about this stuff. Side note, make sure you guys subscribe, like, do all that stuff. I hit 1,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for that. I'm going to be covering playoff stuff all throughout this process, so a lot of content coming out, primarily focusing in on the games themselves, so stay tuned for that. Leave me a comment. I want to read the comments. I want to talk to you guys in the comments. I don't care if you disagree with me, agree with me, you just think I'm an ugly person. It's all cool. But anyway, first matchup we are going to look at is the first one on the docket, which is the Pelicans and Lakers. These two teams actually just played yesterday, funny enough, so we got kind of a little insight on them. Don't take that game for too much at all. You have to imagine both those teams, they're very aware that they're going to play each other. They're not showing much of a hand at all there in terms of coaching, what plays they're going to run and everything. So those two teams pretty much just rolled the ball out there and saw what happened. But what I've done here is I've kind of drawn up this little thing here on Google Sheets. That seems to be becoming my thing on here. I really like Google Sheets and Excel and everything. So this is a little thing I drew up to kind of help us visualize this I almost called it play-in matchup between the two squads. And what we have here is we just have like a positional matchup here. And then I brought up like 3 bench players that I think will be important in the playoffs. Going deeper than an 8-man rotation's pretty rare, and you'll see 9 guys get in, and that might just be because somebody gets in with the final 45 seconds of a half, gives somebody a little extra breather going into the half or something like that. They'll bring in like a little defensive specialist or something, or a shooter if they're on offense. So just know that that's kind of the case. But yeah, Lakers Pelicans. So looking at like the first 5 here and everything, the first thing I kind of wanted to do is we'll talk about matchups and everything and how that looks. Then we'll just talk about like series outlook and like some keys to the series that we're seeing, and just kind of go from there. I'm just kind of going to wing this stuff, so we'll see how it goes. Let's start from the top, though, and by that I mean looking at the center. So we have a Valanciunas versus Anthony Davis matchup. Valanciunas is an extremely physical player, and Anthony Davis, we all know how talented he is and everything. He is known to be a little fragile at times, and we know Valanciunas is just going to go right at him, right? There's going to be a lot of bully ball. They're going to try to dump it down to him at points, and he's going to try to completely out-physical AD. Valanciunas is one of the few remaining centers that's maybe a little more traditional in the sense of how they play. He's a bruiser, like very fearless, sets mean screens, so it's going to be really interesting to see how those two match up. How Valanciunas guards AD, that's kind of another story. His footwork and everything is not going to be quick enough, so it's going to have to be a muscle thing, but as of late, the NBA has been allowing people to be a lot more physical, and while we can't necessarily hand check, they do hand check in some ways, so that's going to have to be how Valanciunas matches up with him. I don't see anything being any different here. I think where the first kind of matchup changes are going to come is in this 3-4 situation here. I think you're going to see Brandon Ingram guard LeBron, and I think you're going to see Zion guard Rui, and I think that's going to be the same for both teams. They're both going to view that that's how they want to match things up. LeBron doesn't want to have to play as much on-ball defense if he doesn't have to at this point. He wants to be help. He wants to be floating a little bit more at this point. And Zion Williamson, whenever they play each other, goes right at LeBron. And so he's going to go up. He's going to try to get fouls on him and stuff like that. So I would have to imagine they're going to try to keep LeBron away from Zion because, one, that just makes him move more. Because Zion goes around a lot of those floppy actions kind of in reverse so that he can try to get ahead of speed going towards the rim. So we don't want LeBron trying to have to navigate all these screens and everything. Maybe they'll even start separated and switch for when they get into those actions. That could be kind of interesting to see, but I'd have to imagine they're trying to keep LeBron away from Zion if at all possible. Rui Hachimura, by the way, is one of the few players in the NBA that actually matches up pretty solid with Zion because they have similar builds to them. They're both very bulky. Obviously, there's nobody athletic like Zion Williamson is. There just isn't. There isn't a perfect match for him. He's fast. He can handle. He can pass. He can do literally everything. And he's been playing games this year. He's in great shape, right? So that's awesome. It's how do you prevent him from getting that head of speed and everything? How do you keep him from touching the ball when he gets to the post and he wants to do that little drop step that he always does? He always catches the ball on the block. He takes a look to see who's cutting through, seeing if he has a pass first, which is pretty interesting. And then he'll always just back you down, see where your weight is, and then he always spins towards the hoop and just goes and dunks on you. Like I've seen those moves since I was in college. Like that's what he goes to, that's what he does. And then the LeBron BI matchup, that's going to be kind of interesting, right? Because Brandon Ingram more so likes to work in isolation. He'll come off screens, but not as aggressively as Zion. So how do those work out? Brandon Ingram, obviously, you're putting some length on LeBron. You're trying to get him out of passing lanes, well, keep him from finding passing lanes, right? Because we know LeBron's a great distributor. He sees the game incredibly well. So putting some length on him, trying to disrupt him in that process is going to be really valuable. You might even see Herb Jones go on to LeBron at points. Herb's one of the better on-ball defenders you're going to find in the NBA. He's just completely locked down. So you might see some switching happening between these guys. So I'll be kind of curious to see what happens. Like if BI can't handle LeBron and he goes and LeBron tries to get more towards the rim or something like that, and he doesn't stick out in the perimeter maybe as much, you could see a switch onto Herb. Otherwise, I don't think it's the worst thing to have Herb just match right up with Austin Reeves. Like Reeves is such a good pick and roll player, and he's so smart with how he plays with AD and what'll probably ultimately be Jackson Hayes, and we'll talk about that. But having someone like Herb to navigate that pick and roll, he just is one of the better NBA players at that. So I think that'll be an important one. But as far as what Herb does like offensively and what Reeves has to guard, it's not anything all that complicated. He's mostly a spacer and everything. So Reeves, while giving up some height and some strength, not the biggest deal in the world. And then you have a CJ McCollum, D'Angelo Russell matchup. D'Angelo Russell completely outmuscles CJ, but CJ's a lot quicker. So I think both of them have a pretty distinct offensive advantage against each other. And I would try to run a lot of offense through both of these. CJ McCollum has been an absolute flamethrower this whole season. I believe, did he lead the league in percentage at one point for I think there's like a qualifier on there in some capacity, but between him and D'Lo's also just been crazy as a ball handler and shooter this year as well. Like I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup because D'Lo's like slow methodical play and how he can bump people, get around screens and be big and strong. That's really going to disrupt CJ McCollum, at least defensively. So I'll be very curious to see how that goes. But let's look at the bench a little bit too. Like what are both teams going to have coming off the bench? Trey Murphy definitely going to be that first guy off the bench for the Pels. He's been awesome this whole year. 3-and-D guy, great athlete, great wing. This team has a ton of good wings on this team, so Trey Murphy's going to be the first guy off the bench for him. Can do a little bit of everything. Jose Alvarado figures to come in there. He's just going to be a disruptor, right? Like in the playoffs, he tends to really get going and like really light it up, get the crowd behind him. It's going to be a home game for them. The Lakers aren't necessarily very good away from their home stadium, so that's going to be electric. And then you got Larry Nance, who's just a reliable big man that can do a little bit of everything. Former team is the Lakers, maybe a little bit of a chip there. They've got a nice 8-man rotation to go to. And they've got other players they can go to on this team as well. Like I just listed the 3 that I think will be primary rotation pieces. Like who knows? Maybe they surprise us all and throw a Jordan Hawkins in there or something, and he just goes crazy. Like Dyson Daniels probably more likely to get in, but they've got other weapons that they can throw out there, man. And they've got other options at center that they could throw out if they really need to. Like Cody Zeller played some minutes at points, so I don't know. I'll be curious to see where they go with their rotation, but I imagine it'll be this 8. As far as the Lakers go, Dinwiddie, most likely first guy off the bench for them. If we take a look at just like the last 10 games, Dinwiddie's getting you like 8 points. The 3-point shot's been falling. That's awesome. The free throws have been there. Looks like turnovers are staying down. That's awesome. He's been a positive in the rotation. That's not a surprise. The Lakers have been really good recently. So Dinwiddie, just reliable guy that can play on or off ball, which is very valuable to a team that has a LeBron James who will do a little bit of both, and Austin Reeves who will do a little bit of both. So having a guy and a guard that can kind of go 1 or 2, valuable thing for them. Going to have Alvarado matched up with him at points, which he'll have a distinct height advantage and can shoot over. So valuable to them there. Taurean Prince, typical 3-and-D guy, right? Lesser version, more of a strongman version of Trey Murphy, right? So he's a solid enough NBA player. He's been around the block. Don't have too much else to say about him. He's just going to play off ball and be physical on defense. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets some Zion matchups as well. Again, trying to keep LeBron and Anthony Davis away from him. And then Jackson Hayes. So the Lakers have some interesting things going on at center right now. Like obviously Christian Wood is out and he wasn't playing that great to start with. And so Jackson Hayes has been kind of getting the big man minutes. You could argue Vanderbilt maybe could come in here because this team isn't like enormous once Valanciunas comes off the court. And I know like obviously last year Vanderbilt was kind of a problem at times because his spacing is so atrocious. But it's not that he doesn't go out there. It's just he's such a poor shooter that they're like, no, they're just literally going to leave him. And someone like Valanciunas will absolutely just not guard him. Like he does that all the time. So I could totally see that being a problem. I just wanted to bring it up that I think they'll go Jackson Jackson Hayes, but maybe they go Vando because, like I said, like Larry Nance and him match up probably height and strength-wise, and so you could probably make a comparison, or you could make a judgment and say, like, hey, maybe Vanderbilt would be better defensively than Jackson Hayes would. He's a little bit smarter of a player. In that sense, he's going to get more rebounds, so maybe they go Jared Vanderbilt, but I'm going to guess that they're going to go Jackson Hayes for now. That's just my assumption. Try to be bigger than them. That's going to be one of the advantages that they have is size, and I just think that that's probably going to be a way that they want to do it. Here's just like a general comparison of the two teams that I think is interesting. ESPN has a little thing that you can throw together with this stuff. But yeah, when you look at like road teams, funny enough, like this is like the worst version of like both teams when New Orleans is at home and then when the Lakers are away. So kind of interesting there. You can look at the points and everything. The Lakers are a better offensive team. That makes a lot of sense. Like there's not a huge differentiation in like a lot of the other stats in terms of like 3-point shooting or things like that. Some things that I just wanted to note is that like when these two teams have like matched up, the Lakers have won them. The one game that they did win, that being the Pelicans, is when Williamson and Ingram were both like playing really well, and of course that makes sense. When your best two players are playing well, a lot of times you win. So that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, they've given up 30-point games to Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, and LeBron this year. So it could come from really anywhere when they're playing against these guys. Lakers obviously have been a very, very good offensive team. That's where they've excelled this year, is all on the offensive end. When you look at the Pelicans, they've just been one of the better offenses like all season, and their defense has really fallen off in the last month. But, you know, two offensively oriented teams, going to be really interesting. The one thing to note, because both these teams like to shoot three-pointers, the Pelicans are probably the best three-point shooting team in terms of defense. Like they really get out there and they really contest those shots. And then I believe in the last month, the Lakers have been the worst three-point team defensively. So somebody gets hot for New Orleans, man, like that could be the difference right there. All right, some keys to the game. Can Anthony Davis be physical enough to play with Valanciunas? Is that going to be an issue for him at some point? LeBron's going to do LeBron things. Who's going to be like the next scorer on the team? Because logically you would guess D'Lo, because that's how it's historically been. But like, is this going to be one of those times where they resort to going to Hachimura a little bit more and he kind of heats up? I always feel like there's more to Hachimura's game, and I really think that there is. So maybe they let him handle the rock a little bit more and let some of these other guys work a little bit off ball or something. That way maybe Brandon Ingram isn't involved in like in an off-ball situation where he's probably a better defender. So maybe having him be more of an on-ball defender for most of the game is more valuable. So I don't know. Obviously for the Pelicans, getting Zion and Ingram going is going to be everything. How does CJ play off of them? It's been something he's been great at all year. If he continues to shoot like he has, that's going to be awesome. Trey Murphy's been an elite shooter as of late. So that's all going to be great. I'll be curious to see, like I said, if Alvarado gets like a couple defensive stops or something and really gets the crowd going. Maybe the Pelicans go on a little run at some point. I think that could be something that could make a huge difference in the game. But overall, just like what kind of scoring are the Lakers going to get from their bench, right? Because they've been a good offensive team as of late, but who knows? When playoffs come down to it and these guys really lock in on these game plans, you don't see those 120-point scoring games anymore. It just doesn't really happen. And so who can get the most stops? It's hard to say. At the end of the day, Anthony Davis is the best defensive player out there. So that could be the difference in itself. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking for this series, man. I'm looking forward to watching. I call it a series. It's one game. I'm very curious to see how this game goes. If I had to put a bet on it, I'm actually going to put money on the Pelicans. I believe the Lakers are favored, and I'm not saying I'm actually going to put money on it. I don't sports gamble. I don't hate if you do either. I just don't do it. I like to keep my money. But I'm going to take the Pelicans in this matchup just because I think there's more avenues for them to get going. And I don't know. I don't see this being the perfect matchup for the Lakers overall. I think they're going to get a little bit outclassed. I think they're going to get a little bit out hustled in this game, and then I think they'll just beat the crap out of whoever they play in the next game. Unless it's the Warriors, then maybe it's a little bit more iffy. But I don't know. I'll be very curious. Give me the Pelicans in this one, though, for now, and y'all can quote me on that. But yeah, make sure you guys leave a like and everything. Tune into this game. I can't wait to watch it. I'll be covering the results of these games, too, and we'll talk about everything that happened. But until then, we'll see you guys later.